Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In a wide-ranging interview, Walter Lamothe, CEO of Bentley Co, joins us to share his rich experience navigating the retail industry. We delve into how consumer behavior will shift post-COVID, how businesses can use these insights to prepare themselves to have a massive rebound year once we're all back into the normal world again.
There's been a shift, and it was happening before COVID, but I think COVID is kind of making things a little bit more. I'm not into expensive, but I'm not into cheap. And I think that there's value for money that customers are going to see that what they're buying, what they're put their dollar on is going to have more value, whatever level that they're buying at.
We also discuss his perspectives on the history and evolution of the sector, learn about the insights he's gained during the pandemic, and how businesses can better equip themselves to navigate tumultuous times. Let's listen in. Walter, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to chat with you. Such a retail veteran. Your perspectives, both historically and you're in it now. So, the chat that we're going to have, the discussion we're going to have around retail, I've been so looking forward to. Why don't we jump right in? Tell us about yourself, your personal professional journey, and what you do at Bentley Co.
Well, I'm a married man with 5 kids and 12 grandkids. It kind of starts and ends with that when you look at it. Very interesting during the pandemic, where you can't see anyone live and you have to do everything by remote. But we're finding our ways. And as far as the professional career is concerned, well, I've been in retail for all my adult life, basically. And have held every job in retail from stock boy to CEO. So I'm kind of seen the workings and the every decade seems to bring its own challenge, and then transformation happens, and it's been no different for every decade. This is the one that's impacting the most, by all means. No. But I've been basically I've been a president of MEX Canada in 2005, and I've either had a job of president or CEO since then. And on the side, I basically started some consulting work in 2018, and have done a couple of support gigs where just helping people think about how to go to market, or looking at how to build an organization, not too fast, not too slow. And so we've been doing a bit of work there, but mostly since 2000, since I've started with Bentley, it's been just really focused on getting this business reorganized and repositioned in the marketplace. And we went through a filing back in 2019, as the world knows. And since then, just when we thought we had it all figured out, well, COVID showed up. So we've been working on that ever since.
Well, let's talk about Bentley & Co. just for the listeners who may not know of the retailer itself, and give us an overview. How many stores, and you mentioned you had a filing, you did a bit of a reorganization pre-COVID. So give us a bit of the background for that, bit of context.
So Bentley was created in 1987, first store in Avalon Mall in Newfoundland, and it's interesting to note that at some point in 2021 we'll be renovating a brand new store in Avalon Mall. It was, it was full circle.
Back to the beginning, back to where it started.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So Bentley was always kind of redefining itself in the world of everything to do with luggage or handbags or wallets, and the history of the business was really during the time where you pile her high or let her fly. I don't want to diminish the model by saying it was a bit of a flea market, but it certainly was the mode of doing retail back in the 80s and 90s, and that worked until it didn't. So we've been before I even got here, there was a big move to close some of the banners. I think at some point there was up to 4 banners or 5 banners, and closed the banners, and we went from 500 plus stores to we're now sitting at 162 stores, and 3 repair centers, 1 e-com, and basically we're a lot more focused, and we will be a lot more focused as we go forward, where we're looking at the life on the go for our customers, and basically anything that they would transport from point A to point B. we're looking to be the solution for making that easier, safer, whatever it takes.
Are you mostly mall-based or exclusively mall-based? Do you have any standalone?
Exclusively mall-based. We have one experiment that's happening in Gistraunt on a beautiful store that we opened up just as everything went for a second phase of COVID. But we do believe that there is certain types of outdoor malls that would be suited to us. But for the most part, we're in enclosed malls.
We don't want to dwell too much on this COVID era, but it is a kind of defining moment in retail for a whole bunch of reasons. But as you've experienced the first, let's call it the first phase of the first year of the COVID era, obviously travel has been curtailed and back to school is a bit different. But from a customer perspective, how have you watched their behavior evolve over the past 10 months? And it's a bit of a leading question as to what your expectations are for behaviors in the balance of the COVID era and then post-COVID. But what has been your observation over the past 10 months about what and how customers shop?
It's certainly been an interesting observation when you see how customers are turning to, I don't know if you remember the term cocooning, but it was, it was the new trend back then, and there's a whole new definition. I call it cocooning on steroids. Yeah. This whole thing about everybody going to shop for home, for art, for sports, for cooking, for all of these things, certainly took front stage. But beyond that, I think the longer lasting effects of these things is that the customers are appreciating the little things in life where they might have gone away from that. I think there's always going to be room for cheap and cheerful, but I think that there's been a shift, and it was happening before COVID, but I think COVID is kind of making things a little bit more. I'm not into expensive, but I'm not into cheap. And I think that there's value for money, that customers are going to see that what they're buying, what they're put their dollar on is going to have more value, whatever level that they're buying at. Because I think the whole thing about waste is become to the forefront. This home cooking, just as a trend that will impact society, I think for a long term, is really talking about how do you maximize, your grocery bill? How do you maximize by making everything at home? And that will transcend to how customers will see other purchases, I'm sure.
So you think the lessons learned and, the time as consumers really is informing other decisions. And as you said, thinking about quality versus quantity, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think for sure. If I go back to the 80s and look at, the booms that we had in the 80s, it was consumption without any logic whatsoever. And as that came to terms, as we hit the 90s, that whole shakeout that happened in the industry, it took 5 or 6 years. But if you take a look at who was in business and the type of business that was in malls in 1985 versus 1995, the change was quite dramatic. I think the difference here is that there's an equal society change that is happening, and it won't take 10 years. It's probably the only difference. I think the change, the forced reflection that everybody is going through is going to change a lot about what is important. And as soon as that happens, you start changing those behaviors a lot.
How did you think about reflecting that in your assortment so far? Are you thinking differently about what you sell? You've already described how you sell it, how you merchandise would be a lot less of the, as you said, pile it high, tough to get through the front door of the store, into more curated. But how have you flexed your assortment to adapt to the circumstances and to how you think customers are going to start behaving and are behaving?
Well, the biggest thing that we did to look at this back in April, we saw that travel was going to be hit. We didn't know it was going to be hit as hard as it was, for sure. Mm-hmm. But what we said is that we have to pivot on what the customers are looking for, still staying within the realm of what we do for a living. So what we did is that we went to things such as COVID protection. So we decided that we were not going to be in the masses. We took a little bit longer than just jumping on the first bandwagon that came along as far as product is concerned. But we brought in, which is considered probably the top 85, within the 85%, 90% effective masks and different paraphernalia that goes with protection. And that has worked quite well for us, quite frankly. It doesn't make up travel, don't get me wrong, but what it did do is that it brought that added solution to the customer. Something that we've been in development and we're going to be starting in the spring, and I wish I could have had a magic wand to do it quicker, but home office is also going to be a thing of the future. Right. And so we've always sold business, but it was business traveler, and we're shifting that to business at home. We'll always have the business traveler, but I think it's just a shift that's happening there. But an interesting thing that's happened is that the day trips or the things that people do every day, so handbags and wallets and leisure, quite frankly, have done quite well. Not, you can never make up the 70% drop in traffic that we've been getting or stores closed, but that all being equal has been, the customers are seeing the value. They're discovering us sometimes for the first time, a lot of times. And that's where we see a big shift is that we can continue to drive value in those commodities. It's an everyday thing. And when travel comes back, we'll have the wherewithal there to do the right thing.
How are you, let's pivot on malls a little bit. How are you thinking about the future of malls? I get asked this question by the media almost on a weekly basis. And I'm still a big believer in malls. People, if people want to shop, it's not just a transaction. They like getting together. But I have the sense that with whatever percentage of customers people go back to work, that the B and C malls might have another life to them because people might be more shopping in their neighborhoods. How are you thinking about your real estate footprint? What are you thinking about malls?
I share that thought. I think that there will be a focus on local. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you look at a mall and you say it didn't have anything to offer before COVID, and they don't do much about it, they're not going to be around. And whether we talk about 6 months or 18 months or whatever, there's malls that had 35-40% vacancy while things were supposedly going well. But that being said, there's a lot of regional malls that are fantastic malls. I mean, they're just great little malls. That really
like Avalon, as you said.
Yeah, Avalon's a wonderful mall, and they're investing in the mall. I think that there's been great investments in the bigger malls across Canada, just haven't been able to profit from it. Some have taken a little too long to get going, but that whole experience is going to be important. But I think sometimes what happens is that we talk about experience like it's going to be dancing clowns or something in the malls. To me, an experience is if I go to the mall, I want to be able to make a full purchase and not feel like I'm compromising no matter what store I'm going in. And I think that's probably how the mall and the merchant are going to have to figure out how to do this together, whether it be having online social structures within the mall, communications to customers that actually align to the tenants. But if they don't do that, it's going to be a big miss. But I think they will. I think that's going to be the realization. And I think there's also going to be this push on both landlords and on customers to have just one, no matter if I go to a mall and I want to make my purchase, I want to make my purchase without compromise. So that means I want to deliver it any which way. That's how it happens. The mall could participate in that. If that means that I need to shop on products that you don't have the space to carry it in your store, because I think smaller footprints are going to be more and more the reality, then we need to do that. And there's a choice few that do that well, but I think everyone can learn to do that a lot better.
Well, it's interesting because you have more mall owners, Simons comes to mind, who are doing deals to actually own retailers. I wonder if that's going to infuse them with the reality of being a retail partner. It's not like they don't know retail, but it's different when you actually are running the retailer as the mall. I mean, some of that is just, let's own them because, without our ownership, they're going to go away. But, if you were sitting down, I think you're getting into it now, if you're sitting down with your partners who run the mall and say, if you could do these one or two things better, what would it be? Is it this integration with e-commerce, like get rid of the model that relies on a sales per square foot thing? You've got to be more, let's say, holistic. Is that would that be your number
100%? True partnership comes from saying the end in mind is mutually owned, but the system is just not built quite that way. This dollar per square foot and based on the average selling dollars, and with the likes of the Apples in the world that have influenced majorly the dollars per square foot in sales, and everybody pays a price as an average, right? So for me, those models are dead and gone. But I think that there's room for them all. I think that there's room for a different level of collaboration. But what's interesting is that when you take a look at the business model, so landlords getting into retail ownership, and it wouldn't matter if it's landlords or banks or whatever. The one challenge that I think is prevalent for, I don't know, as long as I can remember, is that often the business context is so much front and center that the focus on what it is that you're selling and why it matters in the first place kind of gets lost. And like everybody's worried about the business model and the quick delivery, and I want it delivered an hour before you even knew you were going to order it. But what's in the box in the first place? Is it worth it? And
Right.
that whole full service, and can I trust you when I do buy something, that it's not jumping through hoops? And if I do return it to this big mammoth online retailer, are they going to throw it in the dump? And is there an environmental cost to this? So I think all of these things are certainly not yet at the forefront, but I think that those are the things that malls need to step up and say, don't have to give your business away to the likes of Amazon and all these other big online players, that we could be the perfect marketplace. And that's how it was designed to be if you look at the base. But if any retailer forgets that the product is number one, then I think that's a losing battle.
Lost. Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about returns because there's some news out this week. We're talking here mid-January of some big retailers just saying just keep it because we don't want it. Even though you want to return it. So I think returns. Handling returns on lower priced items is a losing proposition sometimes. But it feels like I'm intersecting 2 points. One is I'm looking at some research from Bain & Co. who said that consumers are doing curbside for 5 reasons. The fifth is safety, but 1 through 4 is convenience and all those other things. And then I look at returns, and of course, naturally, when you shop online, returns go up, not down, just organically. Maybe there's that intersection there. How are you thinking about returns in your business? Obviously, a weird year because you're closed, you can't take returns back. But how are you thinking returns are going to evolve, and is there opportunity there?
I think returns, there's really different realities for different businesses. Cheap apparel could be up to 40% returns. I think those are stats that are not unbelievable. And when you're already looking at these things, returns is just part of a business model. What is your business model to start with? And when you are willing to lose money to be able to gain market share, and it doesn't matter who you are, returns are just another added negative. So when you hear in the world of success in e-com businesses, what you're never hearing really is what is the success from a bottom line point of view. Mm-hmm. By the time you ship from multiple locations, by the time you return from multiple locations, by the time you centralize and get, especially if you're talking about fashion where you have time limited shelf life, there's no money in it. And so the consumer wants convenience. So I think the only way that this can be done is that uni-channel. The store is my place. I return at any time. It's easy. If I don't have places to drop off because I don't have stores, I think that's where the inconvenience of just online has been and will continue. But returns are an inevitable part of I'm going to sell you 4 because you don't know what size. So if I can be better at telling you how to figure out your size, then you'll only buy maybe 2. And I think a lot of that's why 40% returns. Think about it. I mean, it's just it's how many people making wrong choices because they don't know how to choose.
And I wonder if you share my perspective has always been the return is a great opportunity to continue to build a great customer relationship. Returns done well can be actually a great thing, right?
Returns done well are a fantastic way to build that relationship. The challenge is that when you have this nameless entity that you're sending it back to a warehouse, you're happy you just got credited, but there's no relationship building there. Mm. So it's not about not being for or against big online companies. The challenge is that the consumers, if you're talking experience, the one experience is that it was seamless. It was easy to buy. It came when it said,
right,
and it was easy to return.
It's efficient,
so those components are done. Right? But if you don't look at what's in the box, I don't know how sustainable this is. And the models for profitability in many, many components are just not there. So there's an acquisition of customer that's valued here, and there's all kinds of other benefits, but the pure profitability of online. I mean, I know some online businesses in the U.S. over $200 million and have yet to turn a profit.
Yeah.
Like, when is it coming?
Well, let's yeah. Yeah. At what point does the model, because the model's almost not built to turn a profit, but anyway, that's a whole other discussion. Let's turn our minds and let's get to your experience, and for the listeners out there, a couple of last questions. What lessons have you learned about running and operating a business that you would take forward post pandemic? And the other side of that coin, the other side of that question is, what things should retail industry leaders leave behind post COVID? So first of all, what have you learned about running the business that you didn't already know? You're such a veteran, but life teaches us lessons every day. And then let's talk about what retailers should do less of post COVID and in 2022 and beyond.
I don't know that there were brand new lessons. I just think that some of them just become very very amplified with challenges like this. I think the one thing is to keep your partnerships close. Relationships with stakeholders, internal and external, is very, very important during times of uncertainty, and you can't over communicate. Even if you repeat yourself, you're better to do it every week than to say, oh, they know I told them before. And I think that's even in good times, you have to, you don't know what the individual who's dealing with you is dealing with. And sometimes understanding that relationship, it helps a lot. But I think the biggest things is to think like a startup. You're far from a startup at 165 stores, but there's thinking that becomes institutionalized in every organization that you do because you've always done. And startups don't get those hangups. They make other mistakes, but they don't have those hangups. So while being lean and agile has new meaning when cash is just not coming in, when stores closed, creating a seamless experience for your consumer has got to be front of mind and speed it up. We were always on that game plan, but truthfully, we were going too slow. I would say the last one of probably 1,000 more, but is lean also applies to inventory. I mean, retailers have a tendency to love inventory, and I think that the ability in faster turns and able to pivot is going to be key for many, many moons to come. Just because it's an essential part to being where the customer is and not where she was.
That's an interesting last point, because I've talked to executives who say essentially not the opposite, but are being more towards having more inventory because it allows them more certainty. In other words, they felt like they were playing it too close to the line, and when there's a disruption in the supply chain, as there has been, there won't always be of this magnitude, that they're caught short. So how do you balance those two things? How do you balance that efficiency versus, in such uncertain times, how do you balance inventory and having the right amount of stuff in the right place? What's the approach that you would recommend?
Yeah, it's a long-term question that retailers deal with all the time. But I got to say that if you're looking at the difference between sitting on inventory that's aging by the minute or chasing inventory, I'll take chasing inventory any day. But there's a balance. Okay. You gotta cover your core, and your core has to be solid within the supply chain, which gives you your meat and potatoes every week, no matter what business you're in. But beyond that, you need to chase, and if you'll never go bankrupt by unless you close the doors like we're doing now. But you'll never go bankrupt because you're short on inventory. But you can, if you got inventory you can't sell. And even the most conservative retailers I know have caught themselves in a position sometimes just and if you have a running something that's driving and you have evidence of it, then go for it. There's no question. But to say overall, this is my safety net, I don't quite think that's the case, because you said it costs money to hold inventory, it costs money to have warehousing and whatever else we have. So I just think that the agility of being where the customer is in supply chain by the nature of supply chain is not an easy thing. But I think it's the only way that that you can survive and grow is to have appropriate merchandise for the customers thinking now.
Last question for you. Cast your mind forward, as you probably already are, because you buy well in advance, to 2022. And what do you think? How do you think retail will look different in 2022? I mean, we've already talked about likely there'll be way more people working at home than going to the office. There might be in the short term-ish less business travel, but fundamentally, what do you think will be different about retail in 2022?
Well, I think that the world is going to go through, the end of cabin fever, and that's going to have all kinds of effects on trends of anything in entertainment, anything in arts, anything in travel. There's a pent up demand. This was the people weren't traveling because they hated it. They're traveling because they loved it, and we've taken that away from them. They went to concerts not because they couldn't hear it on the radio; it's because they love that live feeling. So all of those things, I think, are going to come at us fast and furious. But I would think that the customer, generally speaking, is going to be in a place where they say, "Don't waste my time. Give me the experience I want. Give it to me the way I want it. Don't overcharge me." And make sure that, quality over quantity is going to be more and more the way we're looking at it. So as we look at, 2022 for ourselves, those who will survive this thing, and there will be a lot, are going to be quite strong, actually, because I think that they've learned all these lessons and at least for the next 5 years, will use them appropriately. I think that there's going to be a lot more startups. I think that people are going to say, let's fill this hole that somebody else left behind. I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure from technology to keep reinventing the next bells and whistles about what should be the next thing that's going to make all the difference. But I would suggest that any business model that is not right to start with, technology is not going to fix it for you. So
right.
I think cheap and cheerful.
The magic wand only works.
Sure.
Right? When
you know how much money was spent in retail and technology that was supposed to give us a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 return? It never happened. It's if those numbers were ever added up and really put into a bucket, you'd be shocked. You'd pay off the national debt.
Well, listen, I love the way we're kind of wrapping up our discussion on that positive note of if you can make it through these times, that the industry and the players in it will be stronger, and there'll be new players, and things will continue. So, Walter, it's been such a treat having the discussion, having you on the podcast. Thanks so much for making the time to chat with me on the Voice of Retail podcast.
Well, this is great. Thank you very much, and you're a class act. So I'll look forward to listening to many more of your podcasts.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating and review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company, Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Visit my website at meleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe and have a great week.